Now, before we begin, I do just want to go ahead and put out a disclaimer for this video. This video will be covering the hurting of a young child. So understandably, if you do not want to participate and watch in this video, I understand. It's okay. You can click off now and you can check out some of the other videos that we do have posted on this channel. And I also thank you so very much for tuning in.
Hey girl. Hey girl.
Hi.
It's your birthday?
Uh-huh.
Why you look weird? Hey birthday girl.
Hi.
Give me a piece on. Ooh.
Today, this case takes us to the state of New York in the borough, the Bronx. And before I begin, I do want to say that this case is a very fresh case. It happened back in 2023, so there wasn't much information on this case upon research, which was sort of frustrating because it's just basically unfolding as we all cover it. There are still many details to be revealed and a whole trial coming up. So I just attempted to gather as much information as possible just to put this video out there and give proper coverage to Jelayah's case, because there were barely any coverage or videos on her case. And I definitely feel like her story deserves to be heard. Although justice is seeming to be served, there are definitely plenty of cases out there just like that has not been told yet. And I feel like if we go ahead and continue to speak on cases like this, other people can go ahead and see the signs and stop things before it gets out of hand. Imagine the one person that is supposed to show you the most love, nurture you, care for you, protect you, was the same very person you prayed so desperately to get away from. It sounds like a very scary scenario, doesn't it? Well, that was the reality for young and beautiful 6-year-old Jelayah Eason. Jelayah Branch, as her family would like her to be known, but for the purpose of this video, I will be referring to her as Jelayah Eason. She had been born on February 25th, 2017. She was born to her mother, Jelayah Eason, now known as Jelayah Eason Kamar, and her father, Ronald Branch. Sadly, there has been no background information on Jelayah, nor Jelayah or her other siblings. No family members coming to speak out on how Jelayah was in her everyday life, although I am sure Jelayah was just the sweetest little lady. But upon research, I could not find anything, any family members or any reports or anything like that of them speaking on their upbringing or just their life growing up prior to these incidents. Jelayah, who at the time happened to be 23, made an emergency call on Friday at 4 in the morning stating that her 6-year-old daughter had been in the closet unresponsive. So the 911 call has yet to be released, so I don't know how she was, like what state she was in, if she was in a panic state, if she was calm, I'm not too sure. But the first responders had been dispatched to 165th, the Forest Houses in the Bronx, New York. And this sadly wasn't unnormal for the first responders. So of course, once they got that call, they're like, yeah, let's get in a truck, let's go, and they headed over there. So they made their way to the building, and as you guys can see, it was a projects building, or housing building is the correct word, I believe. And if you live in New York City, if you know anything about New York City, transparency moment for right now, if you guys know anything about New York City buildings, most of them are not kept in mint condition. So the building was described as just trashy, smelled full of urine and feces, just in poor condition overall. Now, just a little piece of important information. The building was funded by the Federal Funding Housing Program, and basically these buildings were just left in neglect. Like, no one cared for them, and you know, people lived here, children lived here, so it was honestly really sad to hear and see even. But the police arrive and they head up to the 12th floor. They knock on the door and Jelayah opens it up. They go into the apartment where they find 6-year-old Jelayah unconscious in the closet. The mother of 3 expresses to the police that she was home alone with her children and she woke up and she went to go check on her daughter, and that is how she found her, basically. And she said they were home alone, so it's like, how could this happen? What truly happened to Jelayah? Jelayah was then rushed to Lincoln Hospital and she was sadly pronounced dead an hour later. After being examined, it was found out that Jelayah had so many bruises covering her body, and these bruises were in various different stages of healing. I believe I mentioned before, I don't know if I did, but Jelayah did have other siblings. She actually had 2 other siblings, and then her father had older children as well. So yeah, but living with her, she did have 2 other siblings in the home. So after what happened with Jelayah, they did bring the other 2 children over to be assessed, and those other children's names were Jazier, who was the 8-year-old brother, and then her 2-year-old sister Jelayah. Jelayah's other children were no different. They had marks indicating that they had previously been restrained. Now, one of the detectives working closely with the case, Detective Frank Hernandez, he had made a statement that Jazier, who was her 8-year-old brother, he had small cuts all over his body as well. And again, these cuts were in different healing stages, and we know that that means that the beatings were consistent. They were happening a lot over a period of time, on multiple occasions at that. This young man had bruises on his scalp, his back, his arms, his legs, basically his entire body. The baby, Jelayah, the 2-year-old, she had a widespread discoloration scar on her thigh, her inner thigh, and on her bottom. And like, none of these beatings were justified at all. Not the 8-year-old, not the 6-year-old, none of these beatings were justified at all. But a 2-year-old, what can a 2-year-old possibly do, you know? They don't even really understand morally right from wrong. And again, none of these children deserve to be beaten at all, disciplined in that way at all. Upon research, it had been revealed that several documents had showed that many calls had been made prior to this incident. 2 of those prior cases before this incident involved her 8-year-old son. And these children were not silent about what had been going on with them at home, especially the eldest boy. But even with the children being so vocal about what had been going on with them at home and the allegations, it seemed that no one wanted to help them, and they still had no one by their side at this moment. As I stated before, this was not Lineage's first run-in with the police involving her children. And I meant to say Jelayah. The J is messing me up, so if I keep calling her Lineage, please excuse me. But from what she did to her daughter, I really don't even think she deserves the respect of having her name corrected, so I don't really think it matters. But this was not her first run-in with the police involving her children and her neglectful ways. There had been several calls made to the apartment regarding that before this incident had happened, but we do not have any details at this moment about what those calls really were about. So we can't really speculate, but we can give just a little idea of what it could have been, you know, pertaining to. An anonymous person did come out giving some information on Jelayah and stating she had been just basically confirming what we knew, that she had been a subject of several neglect and abuse cases towards her 8-year-old son, including an incident that happened just a year prior to this one. Now, before I continue and telling you what happened, I just want to go ahead and say I don't understand why people do not come forth when it has to do with children, when it's involving children, why they stay anonymous, or why they decide to just stay quiet when they see certain things and not help those children. We see this far too many times with caseworkers, friends of family members, and it's honestly disgusting. There should be no reason why you want to be anonymous. You should be proud on reporting things like that because it has to do with an innocent child. So that simply just rubs me the wrong way sometimes. And it's unbelievable to think how much times this happened on a daily. All right, so in October of the year 2022, Jelayah had actually went to school with a bruised and swollen face. His school, of course, immediately reported it after he told them what had happened. And so his school sat him down and, they obviously asked him a series of questions, and they asked, "Hey, Jelayah, what happened to your face?" And he's like, out of his mouth, he told them, "My mother punched and kicked me." This young boy said that out of his mouth to the authorities. Now, he said the reasoning behind this was because he drank from the sink. Jelayah's school had also reported that there were numerous times that Jelayah had been absent from school. They had made a statement as well saying that when he was in attendance, he was picked up very, very late. And I'm not talking 15, 20 minutes late, an hour, 2 hours late, the max. And while his peers were getting fresh with the new kicks and ironing their fresh clothes that they just got for back to school, Jelayah was not experiencing that, sadly. He had been going to school with the same dirty clothes for days in a row, and it had been reported that he had smelled of urine. So the school did go ahead and call Child Protective Services, CPS, and disclaimer, this part is going to frustrate you. Now, I don't know if this is part of CPS's standard procedure before they go in and do their investigation. I would hope not, and if it is, I would hope they change this procedure. But CPS had actually waited an entire week to go ahead and send a caseworker to investigate. A moment of silence for their stupidity. I honestly just feel like, when are we going to start admitting that sometimes CPS is the problem in their neglectful ways as well? They play a major, major part when they're supposed to be helping these children. Of course, by then the bruises were gone, healed, whatever. And they, of course, did speak to Jelayah, and he told them exactly what he told his school. But he did tell them that he still felt safe with his mother. He didn't want to, leave her. So, they didn't investigate further. And he's a kid, he was basically like in a tug of war between wanting help and also still loving his mother. So I just feel so bad, and I just cannot imagine what he felt in that moment. But at this time, that 8-year-old Jelayah had been going through all of these things and actually trying to speak up and report about what had been going on with him. Jelayah had been only 5 years old, and she was not attending school. At 3:42 in the morning, a man is sleeping soundly in his bed, and he is awoken by the noise of screaming. Horrific screaming. Dennis Rivera had been asleep inside his New York City apartment, and his walls aren't as thin as he may want them to be, so he can hear everything from his neighbors. And he's exhausted, and he hears screaming, and it sounds like a child screaming and in danger. This deeply worried Rivera. And Rivera had been the neighbor of Jelayah. He lived above the family of 4, and he's seen the family of 4 around a couple of times, and the mother to him looked harmless. But tonight he wondered what those screams could have been from. He didn't think the kids were playing because the screams sound a little too horrific. Just before Jelayah had been found in a closet and had been pronounced dead, this upstairs neighbor had heard her screaming in the most horrific way possible. So what truly happened that night? Mr. Rivera described the most horrific screams he had ever heard. He said it sounded like someone had been screaming for dear life. He said that the person kept screaming, "Stop, stop, stop." He described the loud thumps that can be heard from their apartment to his. He said as if someone had been being thrown around, basically, or running up and down. One of the other had been reported. It had been speculated that Jelayah indeed did abuse her children. 2 days after Jelayah had been murdered, her mother had actually been arrested for child endangerment. And yes, I know it wasn't the other thing, but at this time they had been waiting on Jelayah's autopsy to come back, so they didn't really have a cause of death and didn't really know or have a theory of what could have possibly happened to her. Of course, nothing was off the table, but they did not want to go ahead and just jump in and just accuse a quote-unquote grieving mother. Although we do know, especially from Lanaiah's accounts from that night, that she had been the only person other than the children inside of the house. What frustrated the public and also me upon researching more was that just a few days shy of being arrested, Lanaiah had actually been released and put on house arrest basically, so she had to wear like an ankle monitor, and she had only been charged with acting in a dangerous manner to a child. And like, I'm not sure why 2 and 2 were not equaling 4 to them, but the signs were there. Her being the only adult there other than the children, and the scarring and her prior history, the things that the neighbors had been saying even though they didn't report it prior. I'm just not understanding their thought process during all of this. The motive had also been uncleared at this moment, but people had their theories. They felt maybe Jelayah might have triggered her in some kind of way, I don't know, and angered her mother, and her mother just snapped basically. And some of these theories come from the fact that Lanaiah had actually told the caseworkers when she was being investigated from her prior incident with her son. She had told the investigators that she actually clinically diagnosed with bipolar disorder, but she never got it mistreated, so it was just left untreated. Of course, this was no excuse. This was just their theories. I feel that she could have done something, regular that children do, and that upsetted her mother, and her mother beat her and locked her in that closet where she unfortunately met her demise. Now, thankfully, at this time, while they had been waiting for the update on the autopsy to figure out what to basically do with Lanaiah and how to move forward, and while she had been rocking that ankle monitor and still out for whatever reason we do not know, her children thankfully had not been in her care. And we do know that the system is not peachy. That's for another video. We know the system is not all peachy, but I'm thankful that they were not in her care, and thankfully they were not harmed also while in the system during this process. But they were most definitely away from Mother Dearest, and they were able to basically just have no contact with her, and she had no contact with them. Now, Lanaiah had been out, but she was not silent at all. She would go ahead and post things like here and there on her social media, basically clapbacks at people.
Second of all, shit, ain't no second of all. That's it. That's all.
And it's like, that is what she's worried about at that moment. Like, are you serious? Literally no one will care about how you look in prison. And when I had been researching this case and just basically seeing the things that people had been posting from her Instagram, just taking screenshots from her Instagram of how she would be posting about her daughter, I was literally disturbed. It rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, including myself. So, the little cute Instagram post that, mothers and fathers will do, well, she basically did that, but the way she was describing Jelayah for her 4th birthday, it was not as if she had been happily describing her daughter that she loved so much. Now, I am going to go ahead and read it out loud, only because it's kind of blurry. You guys can't really see it, but it says, "Happy birthday to my baby, my first daughter, the one who pushes my buttons the most. You're so beautiful, but that attitude is stank. Laugh my FAO. Nah, I love you to the moon and back." And it's like, honestly, a simple happy birthday beautiful would honestly suffice. And I know how us moms joke and whatnot, but just knowing what happened and then reading that really put a bad taste in my mouth. I just still feel like, joking or not, we should speak life over our children. Lanaiah would go ahead and post these videos of her children as if she loved them and she cared for them, when really that was far from the truth. She didn't truly care for those children's well-being, and even in a video that she had posted of this little girl. You can just see how withdrawn she had been.
Hey girl. Hey girl.
Hi.
Is your birthday?
Uh-huh.
Why you look weird? Hey birthday girl.
Hi.
Give me a peace sign. Ooh.
Now, Roland Branch, who was Jelayah's father, as I mentioned in the video earlier, he is also the father of 8-year-old Jelayah. He had actually spoke on the situation via Facebook statuses, and from what I saw, Ronald is so distraught and he misses his daughter dearly every single day. There are countless posts of him just pleading and, you know, just missing her and reminiscing, and always just speaking on her older brother and the fact that he has the both of them, and for her to just watch over them. He had actually went on an interview and he had been telling them that he did not know of anything that had been going on, and that if he knew, obviously his children would have been in his care. And he had even expressed that before her passing, he was trying so hard to get custody of her, and he even went to the courts. And when he did go ahead and do that, he found out that he did not have paternity rights. Basically, he did not sign the birth certificate. And for a while after Jelayah had passed away, Ronald had been trying desperately to get custody of her elder brother. But of course, he did have to prove paternity to the children. And that had also been an issue because he did not sign the birth certificate. His name was not on the birth certificate. That had also been an issue with going ahead and burying Jelayah. So it was just so frustrating, I'm sure, for him. I just cannot imagine. I do not want to imagine what he had been going through. It was just, I'm sure, such a lengthy process, and still trying to process his emotions and in different grievance stages as well. I definitely commend Ronald. Ronald definitely had questions though. Besides why did this happen, he had questions of why had it been taken so long to prove the DNA, and most importantly, where was Jelayah's autopsy and why was that taking so long? Along with the public, of course, her father was furious. Why didn't y'all tell me? I could have fought for my baby. I could have fought harder for custody. He stated that he wanted to know why they didn't remove him, speaking about ECS. Why didn't they remove him so he can at least have a fighting chance to have custody for his children? Her father had said to have been back in court around August 23rd, 2023, and that court date was basically to confirm whether or not he can go ahead and bury Jelayah. As of 2024 though, August 13th, I did see a post that he was awarded custody of Jelayah. And if you guys do remember, that was the 8-year-old little boy that he shared with Lanaya. Now, while Lanaya had been out, she had actually been harassed by the public, by everyone. Everyone had been on her social media harassing her on Instagram, rightfully so. They had been finding where she worked and just putting all that information out there. They were really hurt behind this, and to be completely honest, I don't even know why or how she was out. I understand maybe the autopsy or whatever, but it's just all the evidence was there, all the signs were there. But as of a few months ago, Lanaya has been arrested.
Now an update on the death of a 6-year-old girl in the Bronx. Her mother is under arrest and charged with her murder. The NYPD says that in May of 2023, Lynn Nia Eason Kumar called 911 saying that her daughter, Jelayah, was unresponsive in their apartment in the Forest Houses in Morrisania. Officers say Jelayah also had bruising on her wrists and torso. She later died at the hospital. Investigators say at the time, Eason Kumar's 2 other children also had signs of bruising.
And basically, multiple places say the same thing as to what her charges were, and that had been manslaughter. And even in one article that I had saw, it actually stated 2 counts of manslaughter. So we are definitely getting somewhere with some sort of justice. And this time she is held without bond. There had been so much details that had been revealed after this lady was arrested. And absolutely positive that as this case progresses and as the trial comes to fruition, there will be more details that comes out. Now, it had been said that when this had all went down on May 26th, when the first responders had first came to the apartment and they went to the closet where Jelayah had been and they first laid eyes on her, they said that Jelayah was covered in bruises. The first responders said that these bruises and scars were all over her body and in different stages of healing. They said that she had been extremely underweight. And just a disclaimer, I just want to go ahead and put a disclaimer before I do go ahead and dive into what Jelayah's autopsy says. So if you guys would like to click off or mute, now is the time before I continue. All right, now let's continue. Now, what I am about to go ahead and read is just a theory that the investigators had, and this is based off the autopsy, their findings, the evidence, crime scene, based off of what Jelayah's mother said, and also the markings that they found. Because of all of that, they had concluded the investigation into the death of Jelayah. Now, they feel that Jelayah's mother tied her hands and her feet together, and at this time, we are unsure what that was, but it is believed that she hung her daughter upside down. While she had been in the closet, Jelayah repeatedly struck her with an object over and over and over again. Now again, this is just a theory of what the investigators feel happened. So again, like I stated before, they don't know what Jelayah used to tie up Jelayah or what object she used to struck her. But they do feel like after this happened and after Jelayah, basically put her in the closet to suffer, Jelayah unfortunately met her demise that morning. The official cause of death had been determined to be death by child abuse, which included restraint, suspension, positional asphyxia, blunt force trauma, and might I add, several injuries of multiple agents and malnourishment. So not only did this little angel lose her life from the abuse that she had endured from her mother and the suffocation from being left in the closet, but also from starvation basically and malnourishment. She was literally murdered by her own mother for no reason. Sadly, this is something that we hear too often, something that little children are going through all over the world, and cases that have yet to surface. And honestly, it's so sad and it's so disturbing. Some of these things that the children have endured, like no human should have to go through. Like I said, I want to do a whole separate segment on mental health cases and mental health issues and not using this as an excuse again, but definitely the medical issues being left untreated or misdiagnosed, especially with the stressors from today's society, living in today's society, is a lot, and it leads to so much, and these kids are suffering behind it. And it's now to the point where a little child is gone behind it, and two other children that are still here with us, thank God, but they are traumatized, I'm sure. Jelayah will not be able to finish grade school and graduate. She won't be able to step up. She won't be able to graduate college or know what a 10+ year friendship feels like. Jelayah was robbed of that, and she was robbed of that by the hands of her own mother. This little girl would not be able to grow older and fall in love and possibly create a family of her own. That was taken away from her by the same person that gave her life. And like I said before, this happens way too often, and there are people right now that are witnesses to these things, and they're not saying anything. It's very, very important to speak up for the well-being of these children, whether you're a teacher or a family friend or a family member. It is very, very important, because we see things like this happening, and it's very heartbreaking. So I will definitely leave the number to CPS. And you can always call anonymously. You don't have to give your name. And a lot of people do not speak up because maybe the parent may be popular. That person that is speaking up don't want to look like a snitch of some sort of whatever, sorry. So they go ahead and do the irresponsible thing and keep what they see to themselves. And when it comes to the neglect of a child, everyone should be held accountable, in my opinion, because it's an innocent child, whether the child is being beaten or starved or deprived of an education, because that is abuse as well. But I feel like you should speak up if you see it, if you know that it's happening. If it's happening around you, in the vicinity of you, speak up. We are awaiting trial for a court date period, and just updates basically on Lanaya and this case and her charges, and basically the faith of justice and what will happen, the outcome. And throughout this process, this case, I will of course keep you updated with any information that does come my way. Phew. But you guys, this wasn't a long video. It was a lot of information to take in and process, mostly because it was pertaining to a child, and I do not usually like to do cover child cases, but I did not see a lot of people talking about it and getting Jelayah's case out there, and I felt like it definitely needed to be heard. But again, that was it for this video, and thank you so very much for tuning in. And if you guys were able to watch the video to the end, thank you so very much. And if you guys have any cases that you recommend that I cover, definitely go ahead and check out my business email that will be in the description box and in the first comment. I figured maybe because the case was fairly new, no one was talking about it, but definitely I feel like this case deserves to be heard, and someone deserves to be a voice for Jelayah and all the children like her out there. Do not hesitate to reach out. I will definitely respond to you guys. And like I always say, please keep it respectful in the comments. This is a child, and Jelayah's family is possibly still out there. Cousins, her brothers, we know, her father as well. So, and it doesn't cost anything to be kind. So definitely keep it respectful in the comments. And like I always say, let's have a healthy dialogue. So thank you very much for watching and tuning in. And I hope to catch you guys in another one. And don't forget to be safe.
I love you.
You too.